Introduction slide. Hi, my name is Emily Brennan, and this is my introduction slide. My presentation is about crimes and punishments throughout history. To be specific, we start in the medieval era and what they classified as crimes. Then, this presentation gradually moves to crimes in the 18th century and what they consider to be larger crimes. Moving chronologically, we get into present-day crimes in order to be able to compare and contrast the crimes presented. After present-day crimes, I researched punishments in the medieval era and what they used as a jail. Then, in order to be able to compare these punishments, I moved on to the 18th century punishments, then present day. As you move through this presentation, you will learn about the evolution of crimes and punishments throughout Western civilization. Medieval slide. Crimes in the medieval time period did not change much going into the 18th century. I included a quote from School History, Medieval Law and Order Facts and Worksheets because it lists the most common crimes during that time. The medieval era was a very important time period for crimes and punishments because it was the start of punishing people for the crimes committed. The crimes were not as severe as present day, but were similar to the 18th century crimes. Their crimes seem small, but some, such as murder and theft, are still crimes in present day. The image on the right I included to show one of the many ways they chose to stretch a person who committed a crime. Crimes in the 18th century slide. The 18th century crimes were smaller and the most common, which are listed in the slide, did not consist of brutality or murder. Ironically, the punishment for majority of those crimes was death. Most people during this time committed crimes like stealing or larceny, but if caught, they could be hung. The image on the right shows one way of punishing a person for stealing a rabbit, for example, by hanging them. Larger crimes in the 18th century slide. In this slide, the most important part I found after researching is the Bloody Code. According to the website My Learning, the Bloody Code was a list of the crimes during the 18th century that were thought of as larger crimes. It was part of England's legal system during that time and started in 1688. However, in 1688, the list had a total of 50, and by the end of the 18th century, the list contained 215 crimes that were punishable by death. Crimes like forgery were thought of as a horrific crime, and that individual who committed the act of forgery should be sentenced to death. The image on the left I included because it is a tabloid from the 18th century that has people's dying confessions and the crimes they committed on it. Punishments in the 18th century slide. Punishments in the 18th century did not hold back when punishing people for crimes that in present-day time seem so small and not severe enough to be whipped or flogged for. England is a big topic for this slide because they were very harsh and cruel when punishing individuals for any crime. They saw small crimes as a crime bad enough to torture that individual who committed the crime. After researching punishments in the 18th century, I found something called a gaol, which they used during this time as a jail. I included an image of this jail they had in the next slide to follow into present-day punishments. Present-day punishment slide. In the 21st century, punishments have definitely died down. Now, we have jails all across the United States, and majority can hold a lot more than in the 18th century, ranging from 250 to 1,000. I found Cesar Hernandez, who was currently incarcerated in Texas. He wrote a letter explaining how bad jail is, and especially for him because he is in solitary due to his crimes that he does not directly state. Solitary confinement is brutal because it is basically a small square cell with no windows and no human contact. They leave you alone with your own thoughts, which after time can lead some to become mentally insane. This primary resource is important to include because it shows that even though jails are a lot less severe punishments compared to the medieval era in the 18th century, they are still brutal and are similar to those other two time periods because jails are based on the crime committed. Present-day crime slide. This slide is about the crimes that are being committed to this day everywhere, including places like Texas and California, as well as countries such as the United States, Canada, and Brazil. Crimes have increased and worsened in the 21st century. Crimes now include weapons such as guns and knives. For example, on April 7, 2024, a student who attended college in Gainesville committed the crime of murder by stabbing his mother. Crimes in present-day time are brutal, and these types of crimes happen more now than they did in the medieval era in the 18th century. I wanted to include the primary source of a girl named Alea, who witnessed and was unfortunately there for the crime of a school shooting in Parkland, Florida. It just gives an example of crimes in present day and how severe they are in the 21st century. Punishments in the medieval era. The medieval era is most known for their punishments because of how brutal they were. There are museums across the United States showcasing the tools and equipment they used during this time. After researching about torture in the medieval era, I learned about something they used to call a torture chamber. It was a room underground with no light coming in, and it was filled with torture tools they used to attempt to get people to confess to a crime or give up a name. The image on the right I found in the website, Medieval Law and Order Worksheet, and it shows a woman getting punished because someone told that she argued too much. This shows that during this time, the smallest crime or action that a person commits could mean life or death. Summary slide. After thorough research, the largest difference between crimes in the medieval era to the 18th century to present day is that each crime got increasingly more severe. This is mainly due to the advancement in technology and the creation of laws, and that people decided to repeal laws as well. Punishments, on the other hand, over time got progressively less brutal. Punishments started out as torture and, especially in the medieval era, included torture tools such as the rack, which basically stretched an individual's body with ropes and wheels. Punishments went from that to jail time, which, in my opinion, is a very positive outcome. Even though jails are not the most hygienic places to be, along with the food tasting worse than it looks, jail sentences are still valid punishments for individuals and are based on the severity and brutality of the crime committed. Compared to present-day jail sentences, punishments in the 18th century and medieval era were similar in that the torture or punishment was based on the crime as well.